Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small farming town in Texas. While her classmates spent their weekends at the mall or gossiping about boys, Sarah could be found in the woods behind her grandfather's ranch, practicing with his old hunting rifle. Her grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was just 12 years old. "Steady breathing, Sarah," he would whisper as she lined up her shot. "The rifle is just an extension of your body. Feel the target, don't just see it." Sarah's father had died in a car accident when she was 8, leaving her mother to raise 3 children alone. Money was always tight, and Sarah learned early that life wasn't fair. She became quiet and serious, preferring the solitude of the shooting range her grandfather had built in their backyard to the chaos of social situations. By the time she graduated high school, Sarah could hit a target at 800 meters with remarkable consistency. Her grandfather often joked that she had eagle eyes and steady hands, but Sarah never thought much of her talent. It was just something she enjoyed doing, a way to clear her mind and feel connected to her grandfather's memory after he passed away during her senior year. College wasn't an option financially, and Sarah felt lost about her future. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and Sarah knew she needed to find her own way. One day, while walking through town, she noticed a military recruitment poster in the window of the post office. The image showed a soldier in camouflage, and the words, "Be all you can be," seemed to speak directly to her. The recruitment office was small and cramped, filled with the smell of coffee and old paperwork. Sergeant Williams, a stocky man with kind eyes, listened as Sarah explained her situation. She mentioned her shooting ability almost as an afterthought, not realizing how his eyes lit up when she casually mentioned hitting targets at 800 meters. "Young lady," he said, leaning forward in his chair, "the Army could use someone with your skills. Have you ever considered becoming a marksman?" Sarah had never heard the term before, but Sergeant Williams explained that the military always needed skilled shooters. He showed her videos of soldiers in action, talked about the training programs available, and described how her talent could serve her country while providing her with a stable career and education opportunities. The decision wasn't easy. Sarah's mother was worried about losing another family member to dangerous circumstances, but she also understood that Sarah needed a chance to build a future. After weeks of discussion and careful consideration, Sarah signed her enlistment papers on a cold Tuesday morning in February. Basic training at Fort Benning was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The drill sergeants yelled constantly. The physical demands were exhausting, and she was surrounded by young people from all walks of life. Many of the other recruits were loud and outgoing, while Sarah remained quiet and focused, just as she had always been. During the initial weapons training, Sarah's abilities became immediately apparent. While other recruits struggled to hit targets at 300 meters, Sarah was grouping shots tightly at twice that distance. Her drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, noticed her exceptional performance and made a note in her file. "Martinez," he called out after one particularly impressive shooting session, "where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather taught me, Sergeant," Sarah replied simply. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been in the Army for 15 years and had seen many good shooters, but Sarah's natural ability was something special. Her breathing technique was flawless. Her stance was perfect, and most importantly, she had the mental composure that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. As basic training progressed, Sarah excelled in all areas, but her shooting scores were consistently the highest in her company. She could hit moving targets, adjust for wind and weather conditions, and maintain accuracy under pressure. Other recruits began to notice her abilities, and some started asking for tips and advice. Sarah found that she enjoyed helping others improve their shooting. She was naturally patient and had a gift for explaining complex concepts in simple terms. Her quiet demeanor, which had sometimes made her feel like an outsider, actually made her an excellent teacher. People trusted her calm, steady presence. During the final weeks of basic training, Sarah received news that she had been selected for additional marksmanship training. This was an honor reserved for only the most promising shooters, and it meant she would be spending several more months in specialized programs before receiving her permanent assignment. The night before graduating from basic training, Sarah called her mother from the payphone outside the barracks. Her mother's voice was filled with pride as Sarah described her achievements and her upcoming advanced training. "Your grandfather would be so proud," her mother said, her voice catching slightly. He always said you had a special gift." As Sarah hung up the phone and looked up at the stars over Fort Benning, she felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. She was no longer the quiet, directionless girl from a small Texas town. She was becoming a soldier, and her unique talents were finally being recognized and valued. The next morning, as Sarah stood with her fellow graduates in their crisp dress uniforms, she had no idea that her exceptional abilities would soon catch the attention of a general. Looking for a very special kind of soldier, she simply knew that she had found her calling, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The quiet woman who had once felt invisible in her small hometown was about to become one of the most skilled marksmen in the entire United States military, though she wouldn't fully understand the significance of her abilities until much later. General Patricia Hammond sat in her office at the Pentagon, studying classified intelligence reports that painted a troubling picture. The situation in Eastern Europe was deteriorating rapidly, and conventional military solutions weren't addressing the core problem. Enemy commanders were operating from heavily fortified positions, making tactical strikes nearly impossible, without significant collateral damage. General Hammond was known throughout the military for her strategic thinking and her willingness to consider unconventional solutions. She had risen through the ranks during a time when few women held leadership positions in combat roles, earning respect through her tactical brilliance and unwavering dedication to her soldiers' welfare. "We need a different approach," she told her aide, Colonel Morrison, as she closed the intelligence folder. "These targets are too valuable and too well protected for standard operations. We need surgical precision." Colonel Morrison understood immediately what the general was suggesting. They needed a sniper capable of extremely long-range elimination shots, someone who could operate independently and strike targets that conventional forces couldn't reach safely. "Ma'am, our best marksmen are already deployed," Morrison replied. "The few available snipers with that level of skill are either injured or committed to other operations." General Hammond leaned back in her chair, thinking, "Then we need to look deeper into our personnel files. There has to be someone we're overlooking. Someone with exceptional natural ability who just hasn't been given the right opportunity yet." The search began immediately. Colonel Morrison and his team combed through training records from sniper schools, marksmanship competitions, and basic training reports. They were looking for someone with scores that stood out significantly from their peers, someone who showed not just technical skill, but also the mental fortitude required for precision shooting under extreme pressure. After 3 days of intensive searching, a file caught Morrison's attention. Private Sarah Martinez had shooting scores that were almost unbelievable. Her instructors at Fort Benning had noted her exceptional composure, her ability to adapt to changing conditions, and her consistency across multiple weapons platforms. When Morrison brought Sarah's file to General Hammond, she studied it carefully. Sarah's background was humble. Her academic record was average, but her shooting scores were extraordinary. More importantly, her psychological evaluations showed the kind of steady temperament that was essential for long-range precision work. "Bring her to Fort Campbell," General Hammond ordered. "I want to see what she can do." Sarah was finishing her advanced marksmanship training at Fort Gordon when she received orders to report to Fort Campbell for a special assessment. She had no idea what to expect, but her training had taught her to follow orders without question and to always give her best effort. When Sarah arrived at Fort Campbell, she was directed to a shooting range unlike any she had ever seen. The facility was state-of-the-art, with electronic targets that could be positioned at distances up to 2,500 meters. Several officers were present, including a stern-looking woman with general stars on her uniform. "Private Martinez," General Hammond said as Sarah reported for duty, "we've heard impressive things about your shooting abilities. Today we're going to test those claims." The first test was straightforward. Hit targets at progressively longer distances using a standard military rifle. Sarah approached the shooting line with her usual calm demeanor, checked her equipment methodically, and began engaging targets. At 400 meters, she hit the center ring consistently. At 600 meters, her shots remained tightly grouped. At 800 meters, a distance that challenged many experienced snipers, Sarah continued to deliver precise shots. Colonel Morrison watched through binoculars as Sarah's bullets found their marks with mechanical precision. "General," he whispered, "I've never seen shooting like this from someone so young and inexperienced." General Hammond nodded, but she wanted to see more. Private Martinez, we're going to change the conditions. Wind is picking up and we're moving the target to 1,000 meters. For most shooters, this would be an extremely challenging shot. The wind was gusting unpredictably. The target was barely visible even through the scope, and the pressure of being evaluated by high-ranking officers would be overwhelming. Sarah simply adjusted her position, studied the wind flags for several minutes, and took her time preparing for the shot. When she fired, the electronic target immediately confirmed a hit in the center ring. The observers exchanged glances of amazement. Sarah had made it look effortless. Again, General Hammond commanded. Sarah fired 4 more shots at the 1,000-meter target. All 5 shots were grouped within a circle smaller than a dinner plate. For the experienced military personnel watching, this level of precision was almost beyond belief. Over the next 3 days, Sarah underwent extensive testing. She shot in different weather conditions with different rifles, and under various forms of stress and distraction. Psychologists evaluated her mental resilience, while medical personnel confirmed that her vision and coordination were exceptional. During one particularly challenging test, Sarah was required to engage multiple targets at varying distances, while military personnel created noise and distractions around her. She methodically worked through each target, maintaining her composure and delivering accurate shots despite the chaos surrounding her. "How do you block out all the noise and distraction?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Carter, the military psychologist conducting the evaluation. "I learned to hunt in quiet woods," Sarah explained simply. "My grandfather taught me that everything else disappears when you focus on what's important. The target is all that matters." Dr. Carter was impressed by Sarah's matter-of-fact attitude and her apparent immunity to pressure. In her report, she noted that Sarah possessed an extremely rare combination of technical skill and psychological stability that made her ideal for high-stress precision shooting situations. On the final day of testing, General Hammond personally observed as Sarah engaged targets at 1,200 meters in challenging wind conditions. Using a specialized rifle that most soldiers would never even handle, Sarah delivered shot after shot with devastating accuracy. After the final test, General Hammond approached Sarah personally. "Private Martinez, how would you feel about taking on a special assignment that would require you to operate independently, often in dangerous conditions using skills that very few people in the world possess?" Sarah looked directly at the general, her expression serious but confident. "Ma'am, whatever my country needs me to do, I'm ready to do it." General Hammond smiled for the first time since Sarah had arrived. "Good answer, Private. Your real training starts tomorrow." That evening, as Sarah sat in her temporary quarters reviewing the day's events, she realized that her life was about to change dramatically once again. She had impressed one of the most senior officers in the Army, with abilities she had taken for granted since childhood. Whatever lay ahead, she was determined to prove that their confidence in her was justified. The specialized sniper training facility was hidden deep in the mountains of Colorado, far from curious eyes and civilian populations. Sarah arrived on a gray Monday morning, carrying only a small duffel bag and orders that simply stated she was to report to Advanced Marksmanship Training Program, Classification, Level Secret. Master Sergeant Jake Thompson met Sarah at the entrance to the compound. Thompson was a legend in sniper circles, a man who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and had confirmed kills at distances that most people would consider impossible. He was known for his demanding training methods and his ability to transform good shooters into exceptional ones. "Martinez," he said, looking her up and down with a critical eye, "I've seen your test scores. Impressive numbers on paper. Now we find out if you can perform when lives depend on it." The facility itself was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. The ranges extended to distances of over 2,000 meters, with targets positioned in realistic terrain that mimicked actual combat environments. There were urban mock-ups, mountain scenarios, and desert conditions, all designed to prepare snipers for any situation they might encounter in the field. Sarah's training group consisted of only 4 soldiers, all of whom had demonstrated exceptional shooting abilities in their previous assignments. She was the only woman in the group and by far the youngest, but Master Sergeant Thompson made it clear from the beginning that there would be no special treatment for anyone. "Forget everything you think you know about shooting," Thompson announced on their first day. "What you've learned so far is elementary school. This is where you learn to become a weapon that can reach out and touch someone at distances they think make them safe. The first weeks of training focused on understanding the science behind extreme long-range shooting. Sarah learned about ballistics in ways she had never imagined, studying how bullets behave at different velocities, how altitude affects trajectory, and how to calculate for atmospheric conditions that could change by the minute. At 1,500 meters and beyond, explained instructor Captain Maria Gonzalez, a single degree of temperature change can mean the difference between a hit and a miss. You must become a student of the environment around you. Sarah absorbed this information like a sponge. Her natural shooting ability had gotten her this far, but now she was learning the mathematical and scientific principles that would allow her to make shots that seemed impossible. She spent hours studying ballistics tables, learning to use advanced weather monitoring equipment, and practicing calculations that would become second nature in high-pressure situations. The physical demands of the training were intense. Sarah learned to carry equipment weighing over 50 pounds across difficult terrain, to remain motionless in uncomfortable positions for hours at a time, and to function effectively with minimal sleep and limited food. Her body adapted quickly, becoming lean and strong from the constant physical challenges. But it was the mental training that truly set this program apart from anything Sarah had experienced before. She learned to enter a state of complete focus that blocked out everything except the target and the shot. Master Sergeant Thompson taught her breathing techniques that could slow her heart rate even in the most stressful situations. Your mind is your most important weapon, Thompson explained during one of their training sessions. Your rifle is just a tool. The shot begins in your mind long before you ever touch the trigger. Sarah practiced shooting under conditions designed to simulate extreme stress. Instructors would shout at her, set off explosive charges nearby, and create scenarios where she had to make life or death decisions in seconds. Through it all, she maintained the calm composure that had impressed General Hammond during her initial testing. One particular exercise challenged Sarah more than any other. She was required to make a shot at 1,800 meters while lying in a position that was incredibly uncomfortable, with instructors creating distractions all around her. The target was smaller than a dinner plate, and wind conditions were constantly changing. Sarah took nearly 20 minutes to prepare for the shot, studying the wind, checking and rechecking her calculations, and waiting for the perfect moment when all conditions aligned. When she finally fired, the bullet traveled for nearly 3 seconds before striking the target dead center. Outstanding, Master Sergeant Thompson said quietly. It was the first time Sarah had heard him give anyone an unqualified compliment. As the weeks progressed, Sarah's abilities continued to improve. She learned to use different rifle systems, each with its own characteristics and capabilities. She mastered the use of advanced optics that could clearly identify targets at distances that seemed impossible. Most importantly, she learned to trust her instincts and make split-second decisions under pressure. The other members of her training group began to respect Sarah's abilities, despite her quiet demeanor and unassuming appearance. During team exercises, they found that her steady presence had a calming effect on everyone around her. She never boasted about her achievements, never sought attention, but her consistent performance spoke for itself. You know what I like about Martinez? Said Private Johnson, one of her training partners, during a rare break between exercises. She never acts like she's better than anyone else, even though she clearly is. She just does the job better than anyone I've ever seen. The final phase of training took place in a simulated combat environment that replicated the conditions Sarah might face in actual deployment. She was required to operate independently, identify and engage targets at extreme distances, and extract herself safely from hostile territory. For 1 week, Sarah lived in the field with minimal supplies, moving through terrain that tested every skill she had learned. She had to locate and eliminate mock targets at distances exceeding 2,000 meters, while avoiding detection by opposing forces played by other military personnel. On the last day of this exercise, Sarah was presented with the most challenging shot of her training. The target was positioned at 2,100 meters, in a location that required her to account for extreme elevation changes, crosswinds, and temperature variations. She had only one opportunity to make the shot, and failure would mean repeating the entire final exercise. Sarah spent over an hour in preparation, using every technique she had learned to analyze the conditions and plan her shot. When she finally squeezed the trigger, she knew instinctively that the shot was perfect. The confirmation came seconds later. Direct hit, center mass. Master Sergeant Thompson approached Sarah as she packed up her equipment. "Martinez," he said, "in 20 years of training snipers, I've never seen anyone with your combination of natural ability and learned skill. You're ready for whatever they have planned for you." That evening, as Sarah completed her final paperwork and prepared to leave the training facility, she received a message that she was to report to General Hammond in 3 days. Her specialized training was complete, but she sensed that her real test was just beginning. The quiet woman from Texas had been transformed into one of the most skilled marksmen in the world. She had weapons and training that made her capable of eliminating targets at distances that most people couldn't even imagine. Whatever mission awaited her, she was as prepared as any human being could possibly be. The secure briefing room at Joint Base Andrews was windowless and soundproof, designed for discussions of the most sensitive military operations. When Sarah arrived for her meeting with General Hammond, she found herself face to face with some of the highest-ranking military officials she had ever encountered. "Sergeant Martinez," General Hammond said, noting Sarah's recent promotion that had come with the completion of her specialized training, "what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. The operation we're discussing has implications that extend far beyond military success or failure." General Hammond activated a large display screen that showed satellite images of a mountainous region in Eastern Europe. The terrain was rugged and inhospitable, with steep cliffs and deep valleys that made conventional military operations extremely difficult. "For the past 6 months," the general continued, "we've been tracking a high-value target who has been coordinating terrorist activities across 3 different countries. This individual has been responsible for planning attacks that have killed hundreds of civilians and wounded thousands more." The display shifted to show a detailed map of a specific valley, with a compound visible in the satellite imagery. The buildings were fortified and positioned in a way that made conventional assault nearly impossible. High walls, guard towers, and natural barriers created multiple layers of defense. "The target, known as the commander, operates from this compound," explained Colonel Morrison, pointing to the largest building in the center of the complex. "He's surrounded by approximately 50 armed guards and has access to advanced warning systems that would alert him to any approaching conventional force." Sarah studied the images carefully, noting the distances and angles involved. The compound was positioned in a way that provided natural protection from most directions, but she could see potential observation points in the surrounding mountains. "What makes this situation particularly urgent," General Hammond continued, "is that our intelligence indicates the commander is planning a major attack on civilian targets within the next 2 weeks. We cannot allow this operation to proceed, but our options for stopping it are extremely limited." Dr. Emily Stevens, the mission's intelligence analyst, stepped forward with additional information. "The commander maintains strict security protocols. He only appears in the open for brief periods, usually early in the morning when he conducts inspections of his compound. Even then, he's surrounded by bodyguards and never stays exposed for more than a few minutes." The display showed detailed photos of the commander, a bearded man in his 50s who appeared confident and alert. Sarah studied his face, committing every detail to memory. "Based on our analysis of the terrain and the target's behavior patterns," Dr. Stevens continued, "the only feasible approach would be a long-range elimination shot from the mountains overlooking the valley. The nearest viable shooting position we've identified is approximately 2,670 meters from the target location." Sarah felt a chill as she heard the distance. Even with her advanced training, 2,670 meters was at the absolute limit of what current technology and human skill could achieve. It would require perfect conditions, flawless execution, and more than a little luck. "Sergeant Martinez," General Hammond said, looking directly at Sarah, "based on your training scores and your instructor's assessments, you are the only person in our military who has even a reasonable chance of making this shot successfully. Are you willing to accept this assignment?" Sarah considered the magnitude of what was being asked of her. A shot at nearly 2,700 meters would be beyond anything she had ever attempted, even in training. The slightest miscalculation, the smallest environmental change, or the tiniest equipment malfunction could mean mission failure. Worse if she missed. The commander would immediately know he was being targeted and would likely disappear permanently. "Ma'am," Sarah replied steadily, "what kind of support would I have for this operation?" Colonel Morrison outlined the mission parameters. Sarah would be inserted into the area by helicopter at night, accompanied by a small support team consisting of a spotter, a communications specialist, and 2 security personnel. They would establish a concealed observation post in the mountains and wait for the optimal shooting opportunity. "The weather forecast shows a window of stable conditions in 5 days," Dr. Stevens added. "Temperature will be consistent, humidity will be low, and wind speeds should be minimal during the early morning hours when the commander typically appears." Sarah asked detailed questions about the equipment she would have available, the extraction plan, and the backup procedures if the mission had to be aborted. She learned that she would be using the most advanced sniper rifle system available, with custom ammunition specially designed for extreme long-range shooting. "The rifle you'll be using," explained weapons specialist Captain Rivera, "is a modified version of our most accurate long-range system. We've adjusted the barrel, upgraded the optics, and calibrated everything specifically for the conditions you'll be facing. You'll have exactly 1 shot, so everything must be perfect." The pressure of the situation was enormous, but Sarah found herself feeling the same calm focus that had served her throughout her training. This was what she had been preparing for, even if she hadn't realized it at the time. "General," Sarah said after carefully considering all the information, "I understand the risks and the importance of this mission. I'm ready to proceed." General Hammond nodded approvingly. "Your country is counting on you, Sergeant. But remember, your safety is also important. If conditions aren't right, or if you don't have a clear shot, you abort the mission. We can find other ways to deal with this target, but we can't replace you." Over the next 3 days, Sarah underwent intensive preparation specifically for this mission. She studied detailed terrain models, practiced with the exact rifle she would be using, and worked with meteorologists to understand the specific weather patterns in the target area. The support team she would be working with was introduced to her during the final briefing. Master Sergeant David Park would serve as her spotter, using advanced optics to help her identify the target and assess conditions. Technical Sergeant Lisa Wong would handle communications with headquarters. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez and Sergeant First Class Tom Wilson would provide security and assist with equipment. "This team has worked together on multiple high-risk operations," Colonel Morrison explained. "They understand the importance of precision and discretion. Your success depends on everyone performing their role perfectly." Sarah spent hours with Master Sergeant Park, learning his communication style and practicing the precise coordination that would be essential during the actual shot. Park was an experienced spotter who had supported successful long-range operations before, though never at the distance they would be attempting. "At 2,670 meters, Park explained, every variable becomes critical: temperature, humidity, altitude, wind speed, and direction. Even the rotation of the Earth become factors in the shot calculation. We'll need to be absolutely certain of our data before you fire." The night before departure, Sarah called her mother from a secure phone. She couldn't discuss the details of her mission, but she wanted to hear her mother's voice before embarking on the most challenging assignment of her military career. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," her mother said. "Whatever you're doing, I know you'll do it well. Your grandfather's spirit is watching over you." As Sarah packed her equipment and prepared for the mission, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. From a quiet girl practicing with her grandfather's hunting rifle, to a soldier preparing for a shot that would test the absolute limits of human capability, her life had taken her places she never could have imagined. The next morning, as she boarded the helicopter that would take her and her team to their insertion point, Sarah felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. In less than 48 hours, she would either accomplish something that very few people in the world could even attempt, or she would face the reality that some challenges are simply beyond human capability. Either way, she was ready to find out which one it would be. The helicopter flew through the darkness, its rotors beating a steady rhythm as it carried Sarah and her team toward their destination. Below them, the mountainous terrain of Eastern Europe stretched out like a black ocean, broken only by occasional lights from distant villages. Sarah checked her equipment for the 10th time, ensuring that every piece of gear was secure and functioning properly. The specialized rifle lay in its protective case beside her, along with the single custom-made bullet that would either make history or represent a missed opportunity that might never come again. 10 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced through their headsets. Master Sergeant. Park leaned over to Sarah, speaking quietly despite their secure communications. Remember, we'll have approximately 18 hours to establish our position and wait for the optimal window. The target typically appears between 6:30 and 7 a.m. local time. The helicopter landed in a small clearing approximately 8 kilometers from their intended observation post. Sarah and her team quickly unloaded their equipment and watched as the aircraft disappeared into the night sky, leaving them alone in hostile territory. Moving through the mountains in darkness was treacherous, but the team had trained for exactly this type of operation. They used night vision equipment to navigate the rocky terrain, moving slowly and carefully to avoid detection. Each member of the team carried specialized gear, from advanced communications equipment to weather monitoring devices. After 4 hours of steady climbing, they reached the position that satellite reconnaissance had identified as optimal for the shot. The location was a rocky outcropping that provided a clear line of sight to the target compound while offering natural concealment from observation. Sarah immediately began setting up her shooting position while the rest of the team established their support roles. Every detail had to be perfect. The rifle had to be positioned at exactly the right angle. The bipod legs had to be adjusted for maximum stability, and the scope had to be precisely calibrated for the extreme distance. Range to target confirmed at 2,673 meters. Master Sergeant Park announced after using a laser rangefinder to measure the exact distance. The slight variance from their planned 2,670 meters would require minor adjustments to their calculations. Technical Sergeant Wong established communication with headquarters, confirming their position and receiving updated intelligence about the target's movements. The latest reports indicated that the commander was still following his regular routine and would likely appear in the compound courtyard during the morning inspection. As dawn approached, Sarah began her final preparations. She had been lying in the same position for over 6 hours, but her training had taught her to remain comfortable and alert despite physical discomfort. The rifle was an extension of her body now, positioned exactly where it needed to be. Master Sergeant Park continuously monitored environmental conditions, using sophisticated instruments to track temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and wind speed. At nearly 2,700 meters, even tiny changes in these variables could dramatically affect the bullet's trajectory. Temperature is holding steady at 12 degrees Celsius, Park reported. Humidity at 45%, pressure stable. Wind is variable but light, generally from the southwest at 3 to 5 kilometers per hour. Sarah absorbed this information and began making her calculations. The bullet would take approximately 3.2 seconds to reach the target, during which time it would drop nearly 85 meters due to gravity and drift slightly due to wind. The rotation of the Earth would also affect the bullet's path over such an extreme distance. At 6:15 a.m., movement was detected in the target compound. Through her high-powered scope, Sarah could see guards beginning their morning routines, but the commander had not yet appeared. Target compound is active, Sarah reported quietly. Multiple personnel visible, but primary target not yet identified. The waiting was the most difficult part. Sarah had to remain absolutely still while staying mentally prepared to take the shot at a moment's notice. Her breathing was controlled and steady, her heart rate was low, and her mind was completely focused on the task ahead. At 6:42 a.m., Master Sergeant Park spotted movement near the main building. Possible primary target emerging from the main structure, he announced. Sarah shifted her scope to the area Park had indicated and saw a figure in military-style clothing walking toward the courtyard. Through the powerful optics, she could clearly see the man's face, and it matched the photographs she had studied during her briefing. Primary target confirmed, Sarah said. The commander is in the courtyard surrounded by 4 bodyguards. The target was moving slowly, conducting what appeared to be his daily inspection of the compound. Sarah tracked his movement through her scope, waiting for the moment when he would stop in a position that offered the clearest shot. Wind holding steady from the southwest, 4 kilometers per hour, Park reported. All conditions optimal for engagement. The commander paused near the center of the courtyard, exactly where intelligence had predicted he would stop during his inspection routine. For a brief moment, he was separated from his bodyguards by a distance of several meters, presenting Sarah with the clearest shot opportunity she was likely to get. "Target stationary in optimal position," Sarah announced. "Request permission to engage." "You are cleared to engage," came the response from Technical Sergeant Wong, who had received authorization from headquarters. Sarah took a deep breath and began her final preparation. Every lesson from her training, every hour of practice, every technique she had learned converged into this single moment. The rifle was perfectly stable, the scope was precisely aligned, and her calculations accounted for every environmental factor. She centered the crosshairs on the commander's chest, accounting for the bullet drop and wind drift that would occur over the 3.2-second flight time. The distance was so extreme that the target appeared tiny even through the powerful scope. But Sarah's training allowed her to maintain perfect focus. Sarah controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate, and entering the state of complete concentration that her instructors had taught her. The world around her disappeared until nothing existed except the rifle, the target, and the shot she was about to take. "Firing," Sarah announced quietly. She squeezed the trigger with the same smooth, steady pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed across the mountains, and the bullet began its journey across nearly 3 kilometers of mountainous terrain. For 3.2 seconds, that felt like an eternity. Sarah watched through her scope as the bullet traveled toward its target. At such an extreme distance, she couldn't see the projectile itself, but she knew exactly where it should impact if her calculations were correct. The commander suddenly collapsed in the courtyard, struck by a bullet that had traveled farther than any confirmed sniper shot in military history. His bodyguards immediately rushed to his position, but it was clear that the shot had been instantly fatal. "Target down," Master Sergeant Park confirmed. "Direct hit. Mission successful." The compound erupted into chaos as guards searched frantically for the source of the shot. However, the extreme distance meant that Sarah's team was completely beyond the range of return fire or immediate pursuit. "Outstanding shot," Park said quietly, genuine admiration in his voice. "That was absolutely perfect." Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. She had accomplished something that many experts would have considered impossible, but she also understood the serious nature of what had just occurred. This wasn't a training exercise or a competition. It was a mission that would save countless innocent lives. "Pack it up," she ordered. "We need to move to the extraction point." As the team quickly gathered their equipment and prepared to leave their position, Sarah took one last look through her scope at the compound below. The shot had been successful, but now they needed to get home safely to complete the mission. The quiet woman from Texas had just made the longest confirmed sniper shot in military history, but she was already focused on the next challenge, getting her team out of hostile territory and back to safety. The extraction from the mountain position required the same careful planning and execution as the infiltration, but now Sarah's team had to move quickly while enemy forces searched for them. Within minutes of the shot, vehicles were racing through the valley below, and helicopter sounds could be heard in the distance. They know someone took that shot, but they have no idea where it came from, Master Sergeant Park said as the team moved rapidly along predetermined escape routes. The distance was so extreme that they're probably searching in completely the wrong areas. Sarah carried her rifle carefully as they navigated the treacherous mountain terrain. The weapon that had just made history was still warm from the shot that had traveled nearly 3 kilometers to find its target, with perfect precision. After 6 hours of steady movement through rough country, the team reached their extraction point, a remote clearing where a helicopter would pick them up under cover of darkness. They had covered over 15 kilometers since leaving their shooting position, following routes designed to avoid populated areas and known patrol patterns. Technical Sergeant Wong maintained constant communication with headquarters, providing updates on their movement and receiving intelligence about enemy search efforts. The reports confirmed that hostile forces were indeed searching for the source of the shot, but they were focusing on areas much closer to the compound. "Command confirms that the target elimination has been verified," Wong reported as they waited in concealment near the extraction point. "Mission is officially successful, and intelligence indicates that the planned terrorist attack has been disrupted." As night fell, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. 2 aircraft arrived simultaneously, one to extract Sarah's team and another to provide security in case of enemy interference. Within minutes, they were airborne and heading toward friendly territory. During the flight back to base, Sarah sat quietly, processing what had just occurred. She had achieved something that would have been considered impossible just a few years earlier, but the magnitude of the accomplishment was still sinking in. "Sergeant Martinez," Master Sergeant Park said over the aircraft's communication system, "what you did today will be studied and discussed for decades. That shot broke every existing record by over 400 meters." When they landed at the secure airbase, General Hammond was waiting personally to debrief the team. Sarah had never seen the general outside of formal briefing settings, but now she appeared almost excited as she greeted the returning soldiers. "Sergeant Martinez," General Hammond said as Sarah stepped off the helicopter, "I've received confirmation from multiple intelligence sources that your shot was successful and that the target was eliminated. More importantly, we've intercepted communications indicating that the planned terrorist operation has been canceled due to the loss of their leader." The debriefing process took several hours, as intelligence analysts wanted to understand every detail of the shot and the conditions that had made it possible. Sarah answered their questions thoroughly, describing her calculations, the environmental factors, and the precise sequence of events that had led to the successful engagement. "The ballistics analysis is remarkable," explained Dr. Stevens, the mission's intelligence analyst. "The bullet performed exactly as predicted despite traveling nearly 3 kilometers through varying atmospheric conditions. This represents a significant advancement in our understanding of extreme long-range shooting capabilities." Over the following days, news of the successful mission spread through the highest levels of the military command structure. While the details remained classified, senior officers throughout the armed forces learned that an American sniper had achieved something unprecedented in the history of warfare. Sarah found herself summoned to meetings with officials she had only heard about in military history classes. Generals and colonels who commanded thousands of soldiers wanted to meet the quiet woman who had accomplished what many had considered impossible. "Sergeant Martinez," said General William Stevens, the Army's chief of staff during one such meeting, "your achievement represents not just exceptional individual skill, but also the effectiveness of our training programs and equipment development. You've proven that American military capabilities extend far beyond what our enemies believe possible." The official recognition came in the form of commendations and medals that acknowledged Sarah's exceptional service, though the specific details of her achievement remained classified. She was promoted to staff sergeant and offered opportunities for advanced leadership training and specialized assignments. More importantly to Sarah, she received permission to call her mother and share some limited details about her recent success. While she couldn't discuss the specifics of the mission, she was allowed to tell her family that she had performed exceptionally well in a critical assignment. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah," her mother said during their phone conversation. "Your grandfather would be amazed to see what his little shooting lessons led to." But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from her fellow soldiers. Word of her achievement spread through the military community, and Sarah found herself approached by young soldiers who wanted advice and inspiration. She discovered that her success had become a symbol of what was possible through dedication, training, and perseverance. "Ma'am," said a young private during one of Sarah's visits to a training facility, "I heard you made a shot that nobody thought was possible. How did you stay calm under that kind of pressure?" Sarah found herself becoming an unofficial mentor to aspiring marksmen, sharing the lessons she had learned and emphasizing the importance of patience, practice, and mental discipline. She realized that her greatest contribution might not be the single historic shot, but rather the inspiration and guidance she could provide to the next generation of soldiers. Several months after the mission, Sarah was approached by Master Sergeant Thompson, her former instructor, who had been asked to develop new training programs based on the techniques that had made her success possible. "Martinez," he said, "we want you to help us establish a new advanced training program for extreme long-range precision shooting. Your experience and insights could help us train other soldiers to capabilities that we previously thought were impossible." Sarah accepted the opportunity to contribute to training development, understanding that her knowledge could help prepare other soldiers for situations that might require similar, extreme-range capabilities. She began working on training manuals, instructional programs, and techniques that incorporated everything she had learned. The shot at 2,673 meters remained a classified accomplishment, known only to a select group of military personnel and intelligence officials. However, within those circles, Sarah's achievement became legendary, representing a milestone in military precision and human capability. Years later, as Sarah continued her military career, she would occasionally receive assignments that required her exceptional shooting skills, but none would match the historic significance of that morning in the mountains of Eastern Europe. She had proven that with the right training, equipment, and determination, humans could achieve things that seemed impossible. The quiet woman from Texas had become one of the most skilled marksmen in military history, but she remained the same humble, dedicated soldier who had first impressed General Hammond with her natural ability and steady temperament. Her greatest achievement was not just the record-breaking shot, but the example she set for future generations of soldiers who would learn that the limits of human capability are often far beyond what we initially believe possible. In the secure files of military intelligence, the mission report concluded with a simple statement that captured the significance of what had occurred. Target eliminated at extreme range by Sniper Martinez. Mission successful. Terrorist attack prevented. New standards for long-range precision engagement established. But those dry official words could never fully capture the remarkable journey of a small-town girl who had become a legend in the most elite circles of military service.